Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. We've got a lot to talk about. Oh, hell, I forgot to shave. Oh, well, you're going to have to deal with scruffy, kind of getting over sick Tom, as opposed to well-groomed and, well, relatively speaking, well-groomed and everything else, Tom. So, all right, let's, before we get started, tonight's talk, North Korea, Pakistan, why everyone is on autopilot. But before we get started, let's do the housekeeping, the cleaning, the housekeeping, cleaning, whatever you want to call it. So, remember, streams like this happen Monday nights at 8 p.m., Friday nights at 8:30, as well as ad hoc during the week, which is now how I'm doing, which is the format I'm using now for short videos because, well, it's less time intensive, which means I can probably do more of them. So, I do sound better than I did Monday night. I've been getting over a cold all week. Still little bouts of coughing here and there, but nothing more, frankly, more rest and less talking can't cure. Like I said, more rest, less talking. But we're going to do this tonight, and we'll see how well we do. Hold on for just a second. Strap in, get an adult beverage or a cup of coffee or whatever you need, but yeah, this is what we're doing tonight. Remember also that you should follow me over on my blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com. Also writing now for both moneyandmarkets.com and strategicculture.com as well. All right, let's get started. So for me, the big news of the day was flipping through my Twitter notifications to find out that Alex and Alex over at the Duran spent most of their time today talking about my article, the one I wrote earlier in the week about Merkel standing her ground against Trump over at the Munich Security Conference last week, and for what it actually meant long term. And I found it really interesting that they did so, and I should really not do my bad impression of Alexander Mercouris, but he said some very, very nice things about me. And that's high praise, considering that I usually turn to him to get what I think is the right scoop as to what's going on about things that I don't quite understand. Believe me, the cough sounds worse than it is. It's really not that bad. There's just a little bit of stuff left in my lungs that needs to come up, and it's, you know, it is what it is. There's this thing that's been going around. I know a lot of people have dealt with whatever's been going around here locally has left people with a lot of lingering cough that'll linger for a couple of weeks, but it's not bad. So, excuse me. So it is what it is. We'll just do what we have to. Oprah's putting a contract out on Tom. So yeah. Well, good evening, TMD. I'm glad you're here. Just kind of getting started here. So, what I found interesting, and is interesting, the what Alex said, Mr. Mercouris said, where he disagreed with me about what's going on with Angela Merkel and Europe and everything else, is that I'm absolutely looking way far ahead. You know, I'm not interested in what's about to happen next or what's going to happen over the next 4, 5, or 6 months. When something like what happened at Munich happens, that has long-reaching effects that are far beyond Merkel, they're far beyond Trump, they're far beyond everybody. But it's very obvious to me, and I think it started last year when Putin went on his charm tour across Europe, that was really setting the stage for what we saw at Munich last week. And it's the harbinger of what's to come, right? It's the Declaration of Independence. It's the moment. It's the, you know, it's the act of defiance heard around the world. It's like I said when Putin moved into Syria, right? I said that this will be looked upon in history books as the peak of the US's ability to project power around the world. And I firmly believe that to this day. And I think that the deeper this goes on, the longer this goes on, we're going to be able to trace back to that moment and see things as they are. And I think this Munich Security Conference speech by Angela Merkel will be that as well. Will be another one of those moments where everybody kind of sits back and the historians look at it in context and go, that was a big deal. And it's really interesting that, you know, that they picked up on it as well, that the guys at Duran picked up on this as well. And are just not willing to quite call it as that as such to start as of right now. And that's perfectly fine. You know, in many ways, you know, what Alex Mercouris does is much more tactical in some ways than what I do. Not saying that he's not thinking long-term strategy or anything, but he tends to spend a little bit more time dealing with the day-to-day stuff and what's going to happen in the near future. And that's to his credit. In no way, manner, shape, or form would this be considered a criticism. It's just a kind of a difference. I always have I'm always have the big picture in my head when I'm doing this stuff. I really do like to try and break this stuff down and see ahead, and in many ways see what other people aren't seeing because they're not willing to back out and take that. You know, I like to look at information as fractally, right? I believe that all information is fractal, and the more you know about a subject, then the less you actually know, because now more information gives you the ability to ask finer questions, which then delve you deeper, and then finer questions and finer questions and finer questions, and eventually you get down to, you know, bosons and quarks and, you know, and all of that stuff, right? But by the same token, you can do the back out thing as well. And you guys know that those of you who are subscribers know that my stock analysis, for example, I never look at just one time period to kind of make a conclusion about things. I always like to look at things over multiple time periods, usually backing out in time. And sometimes, and you know that I feel very strongly that there's sometimes things happen in the short-term markets. The short-term charts will send a signal that has significance across time. So that you see something that happens on the hour chart, right, where every bar is an hour, and then that is significant also on the daily chart, which also maybe happens to be significant on the weekly chart, that all of a sudden, that little thing right there has huge implications going long term, especially if you get a closing price over all three of those time periods. I can trace back to that hour mark. And we're looking at the whole, and you can see the whole big picture. So to me, Merkel's speech is that kind of event. It happened over the course of an hour or so, but it's, excuse me, it's going to have massive long-term implications as to German policy and EU policy over the course of the next decade, 2 or 3. And so, that's the kind of thing that I love to look for in as these historical events play themselves out, because those are the ones that people will remember. And those are, and I'm not going to argue, and I'm not going to lie to you, those are the ones that drive subscribers. There's the ones that drive fans. They're the ones that drive an audience, right? You get those big ones right, and people are listening. That's the ones that create proselytizers. That's the ones that create influencers and all the rest of it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just interesting. I don't think that, and I disagree with you, WDM. I don't think that Mercouris has gotten Brexit all wrong. I know you have a fundamentally more bearish outlook on Brexit. Don't think that Brexit's gonna exist, but you're far more black-pilled on all of this than I am. I actually think that my take on Brexit may actually be the right one. Again, not saying that I'm 100% correct here, but the high probability event here is that Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, in their own roundabout, backwards way, are going to wind up delivering the best version of Brexit that will be allowed to happen. And that may be in a 3-month extension, Article 50, before finally leaving. It may be something else that happens between now and then. But I do think we're going to see some version of Brexit. And I was watching Alex and Alex the other night, and to me, it looked like, because Mercouris is so much closer to everything than I am, he being British and me being staunchly anti-British at some level, other than Monty Python at this point, and I guess the Grand Tour, that I'm not looking at things as quite as emotionally, and to me, I look at Corbyn backing a second referendum. I look at May opening up the opportunity for the Parliament to vote on an extension, and I just see that as yet another opportunity for them both to outline and lay out who is and who is not a traitor within their own party, and signal directly to the British people, this is what they're doing to you, this is what they're going to betray you on, and you better get your ducks in a row now, and you need to tell us to stay the course. And I think that's what's going on. And I know that there's a wide dissension about this. And that's fine, because y'all may be right. This is my opinion on the subject. I don't purport to know more than anybody else. It's just the way I read the political tea leaves at this point. Let's see. So when we talk about, so that was cool. It was awesome, right? Now let's talk a little bit about North Korea before we get on to the open Q&A. There's two things I do want to talk about tonight. I do want to talk about my video this morning about Weight Watchers, ketogenic diet, and all that. I'm sure a lot of you have some questions. If you do, believe me, I've been up one side of the keto argument and down the other since 1999. So if there's somebody who can answer a question about why the ketogenic diet is what it is, why it works, why you need to do it, and his name is not Chris Kresser or Gary Taubes, well, or Dr. Michael Eads, or the doctors Michael and Mary Eads. I'll give it to you in layman's terms. All right. How much of a Remainer is Theresa May? More than, not as much of Parliament, and not enough is the problem. All right. The big bank, Mark Bogosian says the big banks are getting ready. That costs money. They don't spend big money on things they know will not happen. Are we talking about that the big banks are getting ready for Brexit, Mark? Is that what you're trying to say? I just want to make sure that we're on the same wavelength here. And if that is the case, then yeah, I agree with you. When I see things like deals are in place for clearing houses in City of London still be able to work after a hard Brexit, I have to say I don't really worry about it, right? So, yeah, I just think that there's so many things that have already been put in place. I just watched a short segment with Jacob Rees-Mogg on Sky News, and he was like, if a 3-month extension goes in, then yeah, well, it'll happen, and we'll come back in 3 months later and we're going to have the same conversation again. I'm not going to vote for an extension. He said that quite frankly. He's like, no, that would be silly. That would be stupid. And I'm not going to vote for it. Do I think what he did say, though, is he said that the problem here is that there's probably as many as 500 out of the 650 people in Parliament that are actually Remainers. And that's the big disconnect. And that's the big problem. And again, this speaks directly to what I've been saying for weeks now, that Brexit, regardless, come hell or high water, is at best a Pyrrhic victory for the people in charge, or people who think they're in charge. Call them the Davos crowd, call them EU firsters, call them whatever you want, call them the Soros set. I don't really give a fuck at this point. Oh, by the way, NSFW. But it'll be a Pyrrhic victory for them. They will win the battle and lose the war. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with John Bolton and North Korea. It's the same thing with John Bolton and Afghanistan, Pakistan, Ukraine, Venezuela, the rest of it. How many troop Brexit here? According to Jacob Rees-Mogg, less than 200. And certainly nobody in the British media or anybody else. All right, so let's talk about what happened in North Korea. So everything was going fine. Donald Trump was going to sign some kind of thing, and was going to sign some kind of agreement, which was going to start the process. And John Bolton scuttled the talks, and Trump had to walk away. And it's ridiculous. So, and this is the reason why. And I said it in my article that I wrote yesterday on this. And I wasn't feeling very good yesterday. I was very tired. I started to feel better and then immediately couldn't get to sleep because I had slept for so long. And so I was up till 5 o'clock on Tuesday night, and then I had my all-day Wednesday thing, and then on Wednesday night I only got like 4 hours of sleep. So by Thursday afternoon yesterday, after a couple friends went home, I was wiped out. But I did manage to finish this blog post, which of course then got scraped to zero hedge like the next morning. And I read it this morning. I'm like, that was a lot better than I thought it was. But that being said, it's pretty obvious that, and what's important to take away here is that John Bolton knows that once the process starts for peace in on the Korean Peninsula, once it starts, it only ends with complete denuclearization of the entire peninsula. That includes removing our troops and all of our nuclear weapons. And that is anathema to him. You have to you have to believe, you have to understand that that Bolton will not give up any inch on this, on any of these fronts, on any of these open wounds. All of these conflicts like Korea, Pakistan, India, Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Venezuela, anywhere that they've started conflict. Those conflicts are meant to never close. They are meant to be open wounds that can be spun up into crises at a moment's notice. Nagorno-Karabakh between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. The solutions for these things are Serbia. The solutions for these things are always no solution. Bolton doesn't want us to leave Syria so that we can always call airstrikes in against the Syrian army and try and spin up a false flag or some other thing to try and get people to allow him to send troops into wherever he needs to. Why did Trump pick him? Because Trump didn't pick him. He was picked for Trump. He is absolutely a despicable cretin and a paranoid schizophrenic. And all of it. I was arguing with Lee Stranahan this morning on Fault Lines and about the situation with Trump. And Lee is still convinced that the problem is that Trump's not getting any good information, that Jared Kushner is poisoning the well everywhere. And he may very well be right about that. But at the same time, and this is my point, and I'm going to continue to make this point, Trump has to know better at this point. Trump has to be better. And if he's just in re-election mode at this point, doesn't care, well, then I don't care. You know, why should I give a crap about Donald Trump at this point? Because he was supposed to go to Hanoi and sign an agreement that was already basically negotiated. And then while he's in Hanoi, Lighthizer is throwing him under the bus in his testimony to Congress. Michael Cohen is throwing him under the bus. Bolton then comes in and scuttles the talks on day 2, and the whole thing breaks down. I mean, it's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. Trump will touch North Korea before 2020 if his poll numbers are bad, Emily Sunshine. And then he'll try and go back to the well one more time. So it's absolutely, I don't know at this point what the story is and what's going on. But it's obvious that Trump is not acting in accordance with what he ran on, what I know he actually believes. He has tried now multiple times to fight this, and he has failed each time. We're dealing with, while all of this stuff is going on, and he's deep in trade talks with China. They open up a false flag in Kashmir to get the Indians and the Pakistanis fighting and knocking planes out of the sky and all of this stuff, because God forbid the Indians and Pakistanis don't fight in perpetuity. Modi, who's in a very weak position in India, is in re-election mode as well. He needed something, and he needed something to boost his approval numbers. So our CIA hands him Jaish-e-Mohammed to go in and blow up 40 Indian servicemen and start a freaking war. It's insane that it's that sad. It's absolutely insane that it's that sad. But there's nothing it's nothing anybody should be surprised at this point at all. So Trump doesn't have any control over the appointments to his cabinet anymore. He's not getting good information. Bolton, Pompeo, and the rest of them are just walling, and Kushner just walling him off from everything. And he's not even trying to fight, it looks like. It's crazy. Of course, why is Elliot Abrams running around? Because John Bolton picked him to be around. It's not a false flag. I hate to put it, I shouldn't really use that term. It was a manufactured crisis. It's not as simple as there's fighting in Kashmir, and then all of a sudden these guys blew up 40 Indian servicemen, right? Blew up a bus or a convoy or whatever, and blew up and killed 40 Indian soldiers. Jaish-e-Mohammed, or the JEM, are heavily linked with other groups with another group, the TLT or whatever, which are all for all intents and purposes the same organization, and they've been getting funding from the United States via the State Department and the CIA since the Bush the Lesser years. This is nothing new. These guys were spun up to manufacture a crisis. I firmly believe that. There was a great article on RT, India, Pakistan, What You're Not Being Told. And I reference it in my latest article on strategic culture, which is on the site as of this morning. So it's pretty obvious what the setup was, and cui bono, who would benefit at this point from this? Well, remember, India is trying to get off the reservation. The Bolton is trying to get Pakistan back in the fold, while at the same time pressuring them to assist in a peace deal in Afghanistan that allows us to keep all our troops and our bases there, which is a non-starter, ultimately. And he sent MBS in there 2 weeks. MBS went in there 2 weeks ago with oodles of freaking money and $10 billion for an oil refinery and all of this stuff to help stabilize Pakistan's situation. And so what's going on here is, like, on the one hand, Trump was ready to let Pakistan go. Now we're trying to buy him back. The Pakistani military and the ISI, their intelligence service. Who the hell knows how much control Imran Khan has over anything? He's trying to play nice. The whole thing is now a complete freaking mess. I'm not even sure who's working for whom or who's not at this point. I just know that the whole thing is complete chaos, because that is what ultimately serves guys like Bolton's agenda, and Israel and the rest of them, to sow discord in the region, keep everybody's borders on edge, send all these terrible messages that, well, we're still in charge and we're going to take care of it. It's like, that's all nonsense. But this is all this fucking laptop bombardier son of a bitch knows. It's all he knows. We're going to squeeze him. We're going to squeeze him until the pips squeak. I mean, who the fuck talks this way? Guy's never been in a fist fight in his entire life, for fuck's sake. Someone should bomb his fucking kids. So, yeah, because poking nuclear armed loonies is such a good idea. Well, it is. And the point here is, user 13, the point here is at this point that Bolton is willing to potentially start a nuclear conflict between India and Pakistan to scuttle CPEC and OBOR. They can't just freaking lose with grace and go, okay, well, we're going to lose this part of it. And not antagonize everybody on their way out the door. Because their attitude simply is, if we can't have the world, neither can you. Those are the people running our White House at this point. Mike Pompeo is a dispensationalist, freaking Armageddon ready, crazy fucking fundy. He's got apocalyptic visions of the future in the same goddamn way that the fucking global warming leftists want to destroy wanted to tear everything down to make the planet pristine. It's a religion. And it's got its apocalypse story. It's got its savior. It's got all of it. Got all the trappings of a fucking religion, neoconservatism does. It's based on Zionism, for fuck's sake. It's based on it's this weird admixture of Zionism, Trotskyism, and the rest of it. All bunch of fucking crazed goddamn commies left over, still running Comintern bullshit from the 50s. It's crazy. Thank God Imran Khan has played it correctly, Stoyanovich, and is listening to China, and Putin is talking India down. Modi has gotten everything out of this that he wanted. He wanted to look tough in order to try and boost his ratings back home because he's under massive pressure from on the corruption angle. Because remember, Modi was elected to be the cleanup guy. Okay? Modi was supposed to be the reformer. So, crazy. All right, well, I'm going to open it up to conversations and all of this stuff. So, otherwise, I'll lose the next hour and we'll just be done. And you guys, then nothing will. And I'm going to scroll back for a second and talk. The Venezuelan coup is already turning into a PR mess. That's what happens when you put Bolton and Abrams in charge. You're exactly right. You got Tom and Thornton have been going back and forth on this. They're very right. Venezuela is a mess. It hasn't worked out for them. Bolton is like, we're going to go after you in Nicaragua as well, and then we're going to go after Castro. He's like, he's still playing the freaking Cold War commie game. I know that there's commies out there, and like, commies are bad. And, you know, commies are bad. And state actor commies are terrible. The Chinese aren't commies at this point, okay? Castro's no more commie than anybody else is. It's like the same thing with freaking Ortega, and it's the same thing with freaking Maduro. This is not a philosophical fight. This is about the United States reminding Russia that you're not supposed to fly strategic bombers in the Western Hemisphere. Which the Russians did. And you know why the Russians did it. The Russians did it purely to put the Americans into fucking crazy mode. Putin did this on purpose. He knew exactly what the response to the United States, by the United States, would be when he flew 2 nuclear-armed strategic bombers to Venezuela, and the third one ran a figure-8 pattern out over the Gulf. He knew exactly what he was doing. It was a dickish move. It was an absolutely dickish move. And Bolton fell right for the freaking trap. Bolton should have ignored it. And he didn't. He decided, no, we're going to go take out Venezuela because that's the right thing to do. Is he out of his mind? I saw that, and speaking of Venezuela, yes, Maduro ordered PDVSA's European offices to Moscow. PDVSA being the Venezuelan state oil company. So Rusty Enrico asks, is this the neocons' last push? Or were they never gone? If they jailed all the serious deviants, the neocons would be in jail. It certainly is going to be their last stand. Because when the crisis of confidence starts to hit the European governments, and then everything else starts to collapse around that, it's going to affect the United States bottom line in a way that we're not going to be able to finance at the current levels that we're financing it. And Trump's desire to focus domestically will be thrust upon us in a way that guys like Bolton will never understand. Okay? Never. Yes, it is Western interest, right? I'm sorry. I mean, Stoyanovich, if I didn't make this abundantly clear, this is, again, just a holdover of old British Empire strategies. There's nothing new here. You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Afghanistan is a 140-year-old problem at this point. India and Pakistan situation is potentially explosive. Emily Sunshine asks, potentially, yes. Because we may not be out of the woods of another quote-unquote false flag. But it's obvious that Khan is trying to diffuse the situation in a way that he can. But India is going to grandstand about, well, you got to help, you got to do a better job fighting terrorism. Well, if you don't have control of your own intelligence and services and military, if the military and the government, the civilian government, are not on the same page, then what do you do? Yeah, there is video of Pompeo going on his dispensationalist Zionist rant. It's on video. It's terrifying that these people are in government. He's completely insane. Mike Pompeo doesn't even look normal when he's just kind of standing there. Like, he always looks like he's ready for the rapture. Okay? It kind of it really scares me. And really does. Nothing gets in that brain of his. He has his view of the world and nothing gets in. He is completely and utterly ideologically possessed. I don't know that the indictments on Netanyahu are going to sink him. I certainly hope they do. I certainly hope that this is the final straw. You know, Halsey and I were talking about this the other night. I asked him about it when I was on Tuesday nights. Because, by the way, for those of you who want to, who can't get enough of this mug, Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock with Halsey. I asked him about this directly. And he's like, look, there's just nobody behind Netanyahu at this point. You know, he could be indicted for Christ's sake and still win a re-election. Or, he's going to win enough re-election that he'll be able to form a government and then he won't go to jail. I mean, so I hope so, but I'm not convinced of anything at this point. I mean, we have all these British MPs, stand down and leave their party, and none of them are willing to stand for by-elections. It's the most corrupt thing we've ever seen. So, all right, let's see. Thordoom, all you need to know now is that India is unhinged under Modi is to watch the news in India about this. It's insane. I thought I was watching meme compilation, but it's real Indian news. Yeah, I did. I I heard that as well. I didn't actually see it, but I got that same take from another friend of mine who said, "Yeah, I was watching the situation. I was watching Indian news, and it was the worst kind of propaganda, and because it was so obvious propaganda, and it's crazy." But I think that at the end of the day, Modi just needs something out of this, and then he's going to have to back off because, look, Khan sent the pilot home. He didn't even like wait around, didn't play games with it. He sent the guy home immediately. So Putin's holding on to those guys from Ukraine because he wants the United States at a certain level to overextend themselves on this. He's not going to give back those Ukrainian ships and sailors for love and their money. They're the best thing that's ever happened to him. Because it makes him look strong, and it gives him every excuse in the world to just keep ignoring the Americans. Why would you give him back to Ukraine? Pompeo is a liar. He's terrible. He doesn't even know how to... Dude, the guy doesn't even know how to sell his bullshit well. It's like... He is the absolute... He's as much of a scripted piece of shit as Nancy Pelosi is. You should check him for fucking TIAs, for Christ's sake. S. Waskow asks, would Venezuela's people be better off with private ownership of the oil industry? Venezuela could set up something like an Alaska Permanent Fund. Of course they could. Of course they would be. But, fat chance of that happening, unfortunately. Bolton is the living embodiment of the Bohemian Grove owl Moloch. Speaking of Alex Jones, did anybody watch any of the epic podcasts between Alex Jones and Joe Rogan in these last 24 to 48 hours? Talk about the television highlight of the week. It's going to do better ratings than Game of Thrones Season 8, for fuck's sake. That thing's already got like 6 million views on YouTube. 4.5 fucking hours. I think it's great, personally. I don't know how much longer my voice is going to hold out, by the way. Did the Paki India flare-up be the plan B for Don to gain favorable press? I don't know. I don't know about that, but I can say that what I think it was done was to time with everything else that was going on to ensure that there was no possibility of anything looking good for Trump. Right? Because he keeps talking about wanting to leave Syria, and he's got people over in Afghanistan negotiating peace talks, and now we've got this flare-up between India and Pakistan. It's like, we can't leave it's the standard neocon trope. Create chaos and spin up a crisis so that the heartland of this country, the MAGA-pedes and the freaking conservatives all go, no, we can't leave. And like, no, we have to like invade the world and stay there. And because these people still think that they're all animals. And I hate to tell it to you, but no, I'm not a smoker. I'm just getting over a cold. So, I smoked until I was 29. I don't smoke anymore. I mean, I puff on a pipe every once in a while, but I don't consider that smoking. That's what talking about the Alex Jones rant. That's what speeding up the video is for, says user 13. Too bad I can't do that to live people, dude. If I spoke any faster, it sounded like Alvin and the fucking Chipmunks, for Christ's sake. But I will say that Camille's funny. She's like, Jordan Peterson has completely ruined me. He throws so much out so quick, and he's so engaging that I can't watch anybody else on anything less than 1.5 speed. And she does. She just doesn't watch his YouTube, and everything's like really fast. I'm like, God damn, that guy speaks faster than I do, but just barely. And she's like, it's on 1.5 speed, Tom. I'm like, oh, okay. I was starting to get like an inferiority complex that I didn't speak fast enough anymore. So, now I've been this cough is just, don't make me laugh. So, and yes, you do need to quit. Smoking's terrible for you. It really is. It's about the worst thing you can possibly do to yourself, other than like, it's actually, I don't know that, actually, I'll say this. It's not, I don't know that it's worse in the long run than eating a life of fast food and the standard American diet. But the standard American diet plus smoking equals early death, dude. And alcohol, easiest early death of all time. That was my dad, 65 years old. He hit the quadfecta. He smoked, he drank when he was younger, he was a New York City police officer, and he ate like type 2 diabetes was his mission in life. Yeah, no shit. He threw a clot at 65 and was dead in 3 minutes. So. To me, you're normal. Well, I know. We're both from New York. So, it's funny. It's just the way these things, kind of play themselves out. Okay, so we got about maybe 10 minutes before my voice dies. I really don't want to talk about politics because all it'll do is get me angry. And then, of course, I'll start coughing. So, on to what I thought was the most delicious news of the day. And I don't even mean that ironically, although, by the way, that's a pun. Was the whole thing about Weight Watchers. Was about Weight Watchers missing earnings badly. Now, I was telling my friend this afternoon, we were chatting about this, and I said, he's like, yeah, I heard something about it. I was like, what happened? I'm like, well, they were expected to make $3.30 a share, and they made $1. He's like, that seems bad. I only have an MBA from a top 15 college in the country, and to me, that seems bad. I tell you guys not to make me laugh, and then I make myself laugh. So, and what was the main reason why Weight Watchers is having a problem? It's because of the ketogenic diet. Everybody's losing weight while not starving themselves to death. Because when you're in glucosis, and I'm going to start with the different, what is a ketogenic diet? Let's start there. What is a ketogenic diet? A ketogenic diet is one where you're burning fat, ketones, as opposed to sugars. Right, your body will burn either one. Doesn't really care. But it operates far more efficiently and far better if it's burning fat as opposed to sugar. High blood sugar will kill you like in an hour. Okay, so your body needs to have a mechanism to deal with having too much sugar in your bloodstream that you can't oxidize quickly enough, and that's insulin, right? You eat too much sugar, your body secretes insulin, which grabs the sugar, converts it into triglyceride, and then stores it as fat. And as you have high blood insulin levels, you will be in fat storage mode. Okay, and you will stay in fat storage mode for as long as you're in glucosis, unless, of course, you eat just the right amount of calories to match your basal metabolic rate. But here's the thing: slowly over the course of time, your basal metabolic rate will continue to slow down because your liver will clog up with all of the triglycerides that it's creating and trying to deal with all of the after effects and the side effects and the toxic crap in your food, in your environment, and everything else that will eventually slow down and destroy the efficiency of your liver to actually be able to do its job in helping you regulate your basal metabolic rate, which is mostly governed by your thyroid. And so a lot of people will go and they'll they're sluggish and they don't feel good, and they'll go have a thyroid tested, or they'll be put on thyroid medication thinking, oh, it must be that I don't have enough, whether it's the T3 hormone or whatever, and your T3 hormone levels are down. And the natural assumption is, well, your thyroid's not secreting enough. Well, then that's not the case. The case is that the thyroid secretes T2, which is then converted into T3 in the liver, and that's what actually sets your basal, and that's the hormone that sets your basal metabolic rate. This is very dumbed down for layman speak. So it's the thyroid and the liver have to be in concert with one another in order to be able to adjust your basal metabolic rate, which it's supposed to do based on the number of calories you give your body. not the other way around. If you give your body 3,000 calories of fat every day, your body will figure out a way to burn 3,000 calories of fat. This is well documented. Go read Gary Taubes' Good Calories, Bad Calories. Go read the War on any number of really great books. The Big Fat Surprise by Nina T. Kultz, anything by the Dr. Zeeds. They explain all this shit. It's in relatively layman's terms. It's not freaking hard. Okay, this is metabolic chemistry 101. But the minute you're in glucosis all the time, then over time, your liver cannot effectively oxidize the thyroid hormones to tell your body to raise your basal metabolic rate because you're ingesting too many calories. And so then you start converting protein into sugar to convert into fat. And you do all sorts of fucking crazy shit starts happening. And you sit around all day with high blood insulin levels. Eventually your pancreas shuts down from overproducing insulin all the friggin' time. It goes into shock, and then you become type 2 diabetic. Now, how do you reverse this? You reverse this by stop eating sugar. All forms of it. You stop eating all forms of carbs. You let your body burn all the carbs out. The excess carbs, the first excess carbs you ingest, your body will just store as glycogen in your cells. It literally will take the sugars, hydrate them, and stuff them into every corner of every cell they can find in your body. By the way, you have about a 2 to 3 day period of glycogen stores, which is why when people first go on a ketogenic diet and they go on a low carb diet, the first thing they do is they lose between 4 and 8 pounds worth of water weight. Because they're burning out because they're now finally burning up all this excess glycogen they've been storing, which has all been stored with water, because glycogen is just sugar plus water. So we mobilize the glycogen, pull the sugar off, burn it, and then have to get rid of the water, and then you wind up peeing for like every 2 hours for 3 days. Or, after a while, you just start peeing like mad. Anybody who's gone through, Atkins level induction knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, yes, and you can and will drop a tremendous amount of weight on a low carb diet. And if you never go off program, the fat will never come back. And you can raise and lower your body, your calorie intake tremendously. The problem, sometimes the truth of the matter is that what happens more often than not is that you just don't get hungry and you forget to feed yourself because, well, you're not hungry. You're not getting the signals because you never starve. Your blood sugar never crashes. Your body never sends out the signals. Oh my God, you're out of food. It goes, oh, well, there's fat stores. I'll just go pull those. You go, almost days without it. So, then we can go days without eating. We can't go days without water, but we can go days without eating, especially those of us who are still 20 pounds overweight, like me. Greg Rockenberger, I lost 60 pounds on keto, picking out on steaks, burgers, patties, cheese, heavy cream. After a week or so of carb flu, it's nearly effortless. Best shape and health of my life, 2 thumbs way up. You're absolutely right. So did I. I didn't lose 60 pounds, but I immediately dropped like 20 or 30 pounds. When I went to the doctor earlier in the week, now, this is why I raise my own dairy goats. I'm allergic to cow's dairy. I like cream. I like yogurt. I like my dairy. I don't eat a lot of unfermented dairy. Right? I don't just drink glasses of my goat milk, even though it's incredibly high in fat. The closest I come to having any amount of actual only partially fermented milk is to have my yogurt, right? My yogurt, and the yogurt process only kills about half of the milk sugar carbs. Doesn't kill all of them, but it's fine. It's only I eat the equivalent of a pint of milk. There's 8 ounces of my Greek yogurt. It's about 6, maybe 7 carbs. With a cup of coffee with a spoonful of cream in it, I'm good. That's it. It's all I've had all morning, and that'll keep me going from 7 o'clock in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. But at the it's funny, you will forget to eat because you're not ever crashing out. And you do need to eat. Now, one of the hardest parts about going keto for people who work with their brains, you work with your bodies, it's really easy because you go out there and you'll burn out all your insulin resistance because there's another thing there's another side effect to this that I haven't talked about, which is that insulin attaches to the same receptors that testosterone does and adrenaline does on your muscles. And insulin resistance is that all of that latent insulin in your body holding back your basal metabolic rate from reaching its full potential because you haven't burned it off of the receptors on your muscles. The Body by Science guys have great videos on this stuff. And this is why you should do some strength training to complete muscle degradation. You know, that moment where your muscles just finally burn and then give out. And the best way to do that is like slow burn exercises, like slow push-ups and slow crunches and leg lifts if you can handle them, depending if you do them right so you don't stress your back, and stuff like Pilates is really good for this shit. This, you know, planks, all of that stuff, really good for, or just go to the gym and pump a little iron, or buy some 15-pound weights and do slow curls or slow flies, right, with a 10 or 15-pound weight, right, depending on how strong you are. If you do that, you will also cure most of your insulin resistance, which then absolutely keeps you on it makes it easier for you to stay on the straight and narrow, even if you do go off program every once in a while, which I don't recommend, because then you're constantly kind of shifting back and forth between glucoses and ketosis, and that can be its own problem. And I do that now, and I shouldn't. So, So it is, and now fish and vegetables are not the opposite of keto, because fish are fish. It's mostly protein and fat. Vegetables are, you know, fine if you like them. I don't particularly like them. You don't have to necessarily eat meat, but you need to get somewhere between 40 and certainly between 50 and 60% of your calories from fat. Avocados, you want to be vegan about it, fine. You know, go ahead and eggs, avocados, coconuts, nuts, whatever, macadamia nuts, good, and you want good fats. You want mostly more omega-3s and omega-6s, but you got to be very careful about this stuff. You eat grain-fed meat, or not grain-fed meat. You eat grass-fed meat. You get everything you want. Fish, you get plenty of omega-3 fatty acids in your fish, so that's fine. No problem with that. You can decide what version of this you want to eat, how you want to eat, but at the end of the day, you absolutely have to, if you want to be healthy, long-term, without a doubt. I went into the doctor the other day. I've been coughing all morning and should have had elevated blood pressure because I've been coughing all morning. And you know, for years before I started doing all this stuff, I was terribly unhealthy. And my blood pressure was always on this side of high. And when I was at 30, my blood pressure was terrible. The other day, Tuesday, it was like 116/81. My blood pressure hasn't been that low, I don't think, in my entire life. And given the amount of stress that I've been under for the last couple of years, I gotta be doing something right. So, what's the quickest way to get into ketosis? Stop eating sugar. Within 48 hours, you will be. Like it or not. Your body may resist it. And the best way to find out if you're in ketosis or not is to go buy some pee in strips. Just go down to your local CVS or Walgreens and get yourself some keto strips and pee on them, and they'll tell you how much you have. Your body may resist this depending on how long you've been in glucosis. You may have massive insulin resistance. So, I don't know what edging means, Rexman. Yeah, there's, and, you know, and, yeah, low starch is important. I don't consider most of the white vegetables to be vegetables. Potatoes aren't vegetables, they're a fucking tuber. Same thing with sweet potatoes, they're a tuber. Turnips are tuber. And tubers are, you know, huge friggin' starch storage mechanisms. Same thing with bananas. Yeah. To get into ketosis, go 14 hours with no food, which is not hard to do. Stop eating at around 6 o'clock at night. Go to sleep. Wake up at 8 o'clock the next morning. You'll probably be in ketosis, and eat mostly fat with some protein. You know, mostly fat, some protein. Alexander, I don't know what OMAD is. OMAD. What's a tuber? It's a root. Carrots, turnips, potatoes. Broccoli is not bad. It's very high in protein, but I mean, all those vegetable proteins, I don't know, man. They're all bad on my colon. I have never been healthier when I've been on a like mostly meat diet. Like I went like on a full meat diet for about 2 months, and I was like, you know, got rid of all the coffee. That's the other thing. When you do this, you also need to get rid of everything that gets oxidized in the liver. Everything. As much as you can. And that means someone just told me what edging was. Okay. So and that means cutting back on your caffeine in your coffee, going back to a minimum level where you're not going into like massive caffeine withdrawal where you want to strangle all your coworkers more than you normally do. You've got to get rid of that. You've got to stop, you know, no painkillers. If you're on painkillers, stop. Take a bunch of anti-inflammatories. Take, you know, niacin or turmeric or whatever, and get the pain down, get the inflammation down. Okay. Those are things to start doing. But the minute you do this, you will, oh, okay, vegan 1 meal a day. Do I eat goat meat? Hell yeah, I eat goat meat. Goat's good. Goat's like awesome. And, you know, if you grew the goat and you killed it, you should eat it. Absolutely. Beans are not high in protein. They are high in amino acids. And then you add them to a starch, and that's what you do to make a full protein. That protein, not as good as the animal protein. Got news for you. Look, the truth of the matter is, and I've been over this and over this and over this and over this and over this, but vegetables, you can do okay. But we were meat eaters, and we are meat eaters, and it's better to get your cholesterol that you need to patch up oxidative stress damage from oxidative stress to your cells. It is better to just get that from the sources, that to get good versions of it from your food sources, as opposed to your body making inferior sources of it, versions of it, because your body will make all the cholesterol it needs, but you can either have it make bad cholesterol for you because it's got inferior building blocks. So when you need to go build bricks, and all you got is straw and some water and, you know, some clay and some ash, and you don't have enough, you don't have enough clay and you got too much ash, you make shitty bricks. Okay? When you got nothing but sandstone, you make shitty bricks. You don't have enough clay, you make crappy bricks. Well, got news for you. You got clay, you make good bricks. So if you start with inferior materials, and I'm a fucking chemist, you start with inferior materials, you wind up with inferior product. You wind up with low yield of high quality product, especially in organic chemistry. Organic synthesis and organic chemistry in general, everything is about competing reaction mechanisms and how to optimize for optimal yield. Well, I got news for you. Your body's nothing but a big organic synthesis system. So, caffeine and cigarettes. Brr. Caffeine is fine. Caffeine is not going to kill you. I'm 51 now. I have 1 large cup of caffeinated coffee in the morning and decaf for the rest of the day. In my cup right now is decaf. What does goat taste like? It tastes like the holy amalgam of venison and pork. So, venison and pork. Don't you get meat sweats? I have no idea what meat sweats are. Oh, if coffee gives you any kind of upset stomach, yeah, get rid of it. yeah, goat is similar to lamb, spicier than lamb is, but it's really good. It's really good. I eat a lot of meat. My wife bought a smoker over the Christmas and over the winter, and she already needs to repaint it, okay? Because she's used it so much. The paint that Cuisinart used on the outside is already starting to fray in places. I'm like, honey, you need to like take care of your smoker because this can't rust out. It's not allowed to rust out. Okay. Depends on the goat. Depends on whether or not you slaughtered a buck that was in rut or not. Goats are, same thing with deer. You have to, get them at the right time, and when you process them, when you cut them down and you clean them, you got to be careful how you do it. You got to dig out the glands, and for deer, there's some glands in their scent glands in their calves. You got to make sure you get those cut out, otherwise it's going to spoil the meat. There's stuff you just have to do. Same thing with goats. You got to make sure you don't get any hair on the meat whatsoever. You got to peel it back very carefully and do it. And yeah, once you do it, it's fine. But energy drinks are terrible. They're like they're like the worst thing you could possibly do. They are high in sugar, and worse, high fructose sugar. And by the way, fructose, and this is the big thing about fructose. Ready? High fructose corn syrup is far worse than sugar, and sugar is fucking poison. The reason why is that fructose is not calories. It's not digested. It tastes sweet, tastes like sugar, but it actually isn't sugar. It has to be oxidized in the liver like fucking acetaminophen is. Okay? It's literally a foreign object that the body doesn't know how to deal with. Okay? And if you do nothing else but get rid of all forms of fructose from your diet, and look, and certainly at the beginning when you're when you're in bad shape, you can always add an apple back in, or I have like an apple a day. I don't consider that cheating, right? I don't consider that to be a problem to have an apple and some of my hard goat cheese. Sorry, that's like the best. A pink lady apple and my cheese. It's like the best fucking snack in the world. Awesome. Oh, you've really got to cook venison properly, Emily Sunshine. Trust me on this one. I have eaten a lot of venison over the last 15 years because my friend Brad shoots it off my property and then hands them to me, and that's his hunting fee. He gets to shoot the deer, but I get to eat it. And since he doesn't like deer, but he likes shooting them and not eating them, and I like eating them and not shooting them, hey, this is the perfect division of labor. He takes care of his food plots and his stands and everything else. His family goes out and hunts, brings me some deer every year. It's great. It's fantastic. And believe me, we have learned how to cook venison and cook it well. Yeah, I did get the plug from Duran today. You missed it. We were talking about that earlier. Thank you, Alexander. I appreciate it. Everything. Acetaminophen is terrible for you. I was using acetaminophen because it's the most common thing people use to manage pain that is really hard on, other than aspirin, obviously. Aspirin's far better, but aspirin causes tinnitus and a variety of other things as well. So yeah, venison when cooked properly is unbelievable. Same thing with goat. You've got to know how to cook these things. But once you do it, once you learn how to cook them, and with goat, you generally just fucking pressure cook the shit out of it. You slow cook it until it falls apart, until it gives up, or you pressure cook it until it gives up. And then you make curries or stews or whatever out of it. And this stuff's amazing. It's like, it's the same thing with rabbits and any other animal, especially any older animal. That's what you're going to do anyway. If you're not going to grind it up and turn it into sausage or hamburger, an older animal just needs to be cooked a long time. But that's where all the flavor is anyway. So depends on the cut of venison, right? So we're talking like shoulders. Usually just slow roast them until slow roast them rare. and then pack them in salt, pepper, rosemary, garlic, olive oil, make a rub, slow cook them. Usually on the grill but rare, right? So that they're, smoked on the outside, rare on the inside. Most meat like that, especially wild meat, it's low fat. And so especially grass-fed meat is going to be low in intermuscular fat. So it's not going to like pull apart easily. Even the tender stuff, even the steak cuts are going to be tougher than normal. So the truth of the matter is that you just have to get used to eating your meat bloody, because that's the best way to eat it, because otherwise it just seizes up and then it's leather. So, or you take those cuts and you cook them until they give up with a lot of moisture, and you make stews and whatnot out of them. So yes, fructose uses the same path as alcohol for processing. It's terrible on your liver. It's and it's actually, so like, for example, aspartame is really, really hard on your liver. So your body gets all the wrong signals when you drink a diet soda. Right? You tell the body to prepare for all this sugar coming in. So sometimes you get an insulin reaction from just eating something sweet that has an artificial sweetener in it. The body doesn't react to the actual sugar coming in. It reacts to the signals from your tongue telling you that there's something sweet coming, and it starts dumping a bunch of insulin into your body in order to catch the sugar as it enters the bloodstream and get rid of it as a preventative measure. Because remember, high blood sugar will kill you almost immediately. Best supplement is a Lugol iodine solution. That is also very true. I have one. I made it myself. Again, chemist. Use iodine in the laboratory. I had reagent grade iodine in my actually I had ultra pure iodine in my laboratory. We were never going to use 500 grams of this shit. I made myself a 500 ml bottle of Lugols. I still have most of it. I'll probably have most of it when I die, and put 2 drops in my coffee every couple of days, and that's that. 25 to 50 milligrams of iodine every couple of days, as long as you're not terribly allergic to it. Because it could make, if you'll know, you drink it and you have it, and your nose will immediately stuff up. The biggest problem for the low carb diet, the last thing I'm going to say before I leave about transitioning to a low carb diet, is the following. It takes some time to burn out to get your brain to switch over to burning ketones. It takes a while. Ketones are slower to move across the blood-brain barrier, and diffuse across it until you build up a full store of them in the brain, and then they stay there. And then once you reach a steady state, and then once you reach a steady state, your brain actually works more efficiently than it does when it's on sugar. But the brain will preferentially burn sugar immediately, and that will compete with the ketones levels. And so your ketone levels in your brain will drop after you eat some sugar, and then that has to build back up again. So there's always the possibility of getting keto brain fog. That's what that comes from. And it depends on the person, and it can be anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to get to steady state levels of ketones in the brain. This is just something you have to deal with. And I can tell you that I've run into it multiple times. So, well, and yeah, fiber is important as well. Not going to argue with you. Plenty of ways to get it. Soluble fibers. Plenty of ways to get it. Brett Harris just showed up with the most amazing thing of the night. I'm going to close on this because my voice we're at 1 hour and 10. I need to stop. 2 points about Ukraine. Thank you, Brett Harris, for bringing this up. The U.S. told Poroshenko that they won't back another Kerch Strait event, and the Atlantic Council just denounced Poroshenko and endorsed Zelensky. Tells you all you need to know about where he's going, about what's going to go on with Poroshenko, and that's good news, actually. MSG is poison, but it's Not really. I mean, in large doses it is, but I got news for you. It's just part of the Krebs cycle. Glutamates are just part of the monosodium glutamate is just glutamic acid. Go look up the Krebs cycle one day, and it's glutamic acid with a sodium on it. It's not like it's any different than the glutamic acid because it's glutamic acid. Because it hits your stomach. It hits the soup that is your stomach. And got news for you. It becomes sodium plus and and glutamate minus really freaking quickly. So there you go. That's why it's the glutamates actually that are part of that. That's what that whole what are the Japanese? Umami flavor. That's all glutamates. Like that whole umami thing about certain foods, brewed foods and whatnot. Like soy sauce is very umami, right? They talk about this. All they're doing is they're just bringing out natural glutamates out of the. They're cultivating glutamates. That's all they're doing to make food taste better. That's what it does. Just don't use a lot of it. It should be naturally occurring from in the foods that you eat. You create glutamates in the way we naturally process foods. You know, just normal. Okay. All right. That should be all I should do for this evening. I really need to stop, and I've got a long day ahead of me tomorrow as I start belatedly working on this month's newsletter. But the good news is that the rest of my life, brewed soy sauce, like soy sauce, I don't avoid. I just don't eat it very often. It's like the only form of soy I actually eat, James. Unfermented soy is poison. Do not eat it. Most versions of soy that are fermented, and I'm not talking tofu here, which I wouldn't eat just because it's fucking nasty. Well, everything's a neurotoxin when you define it like that. Calling glutamic acid a neurotoxin is like I don't know. It's just it's not. It's part of food. It's in every vegetable you eat. It's in every plant you eat because it's part of the Krebs cycle that converts sugars into energy that plants run on. The estrogen stuff in soy, that's different. The phytoestrogens are dangerous, but you know, brewed soy, fermented. But generally speaking, a lot of foods that suck in their natural form are much better when they're fermented because you've fermented out all the sugars, and now you're getting all the beneficial bacteria. You're getting the beneficial bacteria and the probiotics and all the other things to help keep your colon in balance. I haven't even talked about the colon. I don't even get into that shit, but just literally, and that's really important too. And that has a lot to do with your mood and the vagus nerve and all this other stuff. But you want to keep that in good health as well. And that's another thing that a low carb diet will do for you. You will no longer be cultivating the wrong bacteria in your colon, but the proper bacteria. All right, that's enough for one evening. I'm going to go pass out. So you guys take care. You have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday night.